Good morning, everyone. This is Michele Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. We're filming today from San Francisco, and my guest, Dr. Dayan Goodenowe, is in Temecula. So we're both California today. And many of you know Temecula as the new wine capital of California. I guess I don't think Dr. Goodenowe is actually partaking in the wine part of the industry, but he does have an institute located in this lovely town of Temecula, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So welcome, Dr. Goodenowe.
Thank you, Michele. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you know what? Asked Jessica, your assistant, because your name, Dayan, I heard some people pronounce it Dan and some people pronounce it Dayan. So which do you prefer?
Oh, Dayan.
Day in,
day
okay.
out.
So that seems more sophisticated anyway. So, okay. So Dayan Goodenowe. So for our audience, I just want to tell a little bit about you, and then I'm going to let you take over. So there's a lot of definitions of terms that you're going to want to hear after we do a brief intro. But Dr. Goodenowe is a neuroscientist. That's number one definition, and we all know what that is. He is also a epidemiologist. He's a synthetic chemical researcher, right? And also a biochemical researcher, right? So there's so many titles, and I don't know how you sleep at night because you are so busy. He's just written a book called Breaking Alzheimer's, which is probably one of the most cutting edge and exciting books to come out on the subject of dementia and Alzheimer's. We'll be talking about that as well today. So, okay, so Dr. Goodenowe, how did you get to where you are today? What were the inspirations that put you on your path to doing what you're doing today, which is groundbreaking research and, of course, protocols for anti-aging?
Well, thank you, Michele. Yeah. So basically, it's just curiosity, an insatiable curiosity about life and how things work fundamentally. And so my earlier training is in synthetic organic chemistry. That's my first degree. And then I went into neurochemistry, look at how the biochemistry of the brain behaved under certain circumstances, looking at the neuropathology, say, of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and depression and anxiety and so on. And then in terms of understanding how to intervene in terms of brain health, led to looking at technologies that we can measure the biochemistry more thoroughly. And so my first real invention is an invention called non-targeted metabolic profiling, which uses a high field ion cyclotron mass spectrometer. So we have a 7 Tesla ion cyclotron in our facility here in Temecula. And this is what allows us to measure thousands and thousands of molecules in your blood. And originally the technology was thought to be used, and we did use it for, functional genomics research and understanding how the human genome works, but also how to diagnose diseases. And it's very good at diagnosing disease. It can pretty well diagnose all human diseases, and done huge epidemiological studies on those issues like colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancers, as well as in neurological diseases. But what became clear from that research was that there was biochemistry occurring before disease, because when we looked at the biochemistry of people with disease and without disease, and then we looked at them again after they've been technically cured, like so the cancer has been removed and they've been considered cancer-free, many of these biomarkers didn't go back to normal, which meant that they were preceding the disease. And this was quite shocking. However, in retrospect, it shouldn't have been so shocking. It sounds pretty obvious now that I know more about this thing. And so what we found over time, and what I found when looking into the biochemical pathways, is that we actually have a health state. Like, we are fundamentally healthy, and we deviate from that health. And that deviation from health identifies what diseases we have a risk of becoming in the future. Basically, it's measuring bald tires, right? So you can say you got a bald tire, may not be flat today, but you know what? If you run on the wrong street, you're going to get a flat tire. If the right circumstances arise, you're going to get a flat. And that's the biochemical issue of prodromes, basically predictability of the future. But these prodromes are essentially deviations from health. Like a bald tire is a deviation from a brand new tire. And then when you start looking at that, and when you start following that bouncing ball further and further, you start saying, okay, how do we correct these issues? How do we correct these biochemical deficiencies? And one of the critical ones was these class of molecules called plasmalogens, and they were related to Alzheimer's disease, and how the low levels of these plasmalogens correlated with the severity of dementia, correlated with the rate of decline in the elderly.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the next question says, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, what can we do about this? And the advantage I have as being a chemist is that I can design molecules. And so I designed human biochemical intermediates. Basically, it's advanced nutrition. So what I do is I do basically advanced human biochemical engineering is what I do. So we basically identify the biochemical intermediates that the body needs that we can provide as food, natural food supplements that can restore biochemical health. And then when you talk about ageless and timeless, which is the title of your podcast series, is that people think of this world, think of this concept of immortality, right? And they think that they're going to seek it. They think that immortality is something that you go out and get. In fact, that's not true. Immortality is something that you're born with. You actually lose your immortality. Okay, immortality is basically life, and it's not. And this is what happens a lot in life. We confuse the absence of a thing with a thing, right? So if you're a scientist or a physicist, and for example, there's no such thing as cold. Like cold is not an actual thing that exists. What exists is the lack of heat. So when you cool your house, you don't actually put cold air in your house. You pull hot air out of your house. And there's really no such thing as darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. And so life and death. So there's really no such thing as death. Death really isn't a thing. Death is the absence of life. Is when you lose life, you die. And then you have to ask yourself, well, then what the hell is this life thing they were talking about? And really, you're born with it. So you have life, it has function, it has purpose, and we have to maintain that. And so sometimes when we talk about this anti-aging or reversing aging, that really isn't possible. What you have to do is you have to go forward to a younger you. You can't go backwards to an older, younger, a previous younger you. You have to go forward to a new, younger you. And that's some of the advanced work that trying to educate people that we can actually do this. Like aging is not a bad thing. You just need to age in the right direction. You need to age towards a younger you, a more healthier you, a more vitality you. And we need to understand what that means. Like your purpose in life drives your ability to get up. So yeah, you said your head might spin because all the things I'm doing, but that gives me purpose, right? I have children with rare diseases that I treat, work with their physicians, and we can circumvent their genetic disorders. And in the elderly now, we can do significant recovery in dementia. We have a clinic now in Canada where people actually physically go to, and we teach dementia recovery and rehabilitation. And I just recently showed people how you can reverse brain aging. So I did my own advanced MRI. So a lot of these technologies are available. They're just not used in a routine way. And so one of the things I was trying to teach people is that, and using my own self as an example, is I did, 17 months of advanced targeted nutrition, and I was able to reverse 15 years of brain aging and showing that up on advanced MRI. So we can do, these are possible things. And it's, but we sometimes we get stuck in the middle of a story and we don't start at the beginning of the story. And so that's kind of what keeps me excited. And so that's how I'm in this. And the other challenge in science is implementing it, right? It's one thing to have an idea, or one thing to actually even prove an idea. It's another thing to be able to make it available to the general public. And so that's why we have a very large network of doctors, about 2,000 doctors in our network now. And we are actively intervening in people's biochemical lives and making real differences in their world. And it's not magic. It's actually quite straightforward, scientifically logical sequence of events. And so, so that's kind of where we're at.
So I assume that that's really, really helpful. And it's so kind of earth shattering for a lot of people to think about the possibilities that you just described, that there is no real death, there's just a loss of life. I mean, I guess in some ways, for some people, that might be a semantic, but yet the way you're approaching it is that you can have immortality. You just have to find the solutions for your particular customized needs, for long life or longest life or forever life. So
Exactly. Well, it's like
yeah.
disease. Like you don't actually get a disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
You actually lose health.
Yeah.
Like you don't, when you get you don't actually get diabetes. You
Yeah.
lose the ability to regulate your glucose. You
Yeah.
don't get cancer. Your cells lose their ability to maintain their cellular integrity. And so, but when we look at something after the fact, right? It looks like it's programmed, right? And sometimes I think we're programmed to die, but we're really not. We just adapt to death, and we need to learn how to adapt to life going forward. And that's what
I
I do.
love that. You mentioned though having a nutritional protocol for people who have lost health and are facing a certain dilemma, like a challenge. We won't call it disease because it's just a loss of some part of their health. If
Right.
I can follow your
Exactly. So
vocabulary,
then,
yeah.
so when you take that approach, then the curiosity comes in. So you kind of have to work yourself backwards to say, okay, where does this begin? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
like really, what is life to a human
Mm-hmm.
being? Like what is it that keeps us alive? What are the core components? Before I get to the very end of the story, maybe I should start at the beginning of the story. And the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the story for human life is we are essentially a hybrid electric car. We
Mm-hmm.
burn hydrocarbons. Okay, we eat protein and fats, sugars. These are carbohydrates. Okay, they all come from the sun, fundamentally,
Mm-hmm.
converting water and carbon dioxide into glucose. And
Mm-hmm.
then different various animals and microbes in our environment convert that to much more complex molecules. But what we do is we take these hydrocarbons and we physically burn them. We burn them into carbon dioxide and water, just like a campfire does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we breathe out the carbon dioxide and we pee out the water. And then
Mm-hmm.
we take the energy that's formed from that burning process, just like the furnace in your house, and we charge a battery with it. So we run on battery energy, and the battery is this mitochondria. And so
Mm-hmm.
and that's quite, you think about it, the human body is literally on fire, right? We're burning carbon dioxide, creating water, and we're taking that energy and we're charging a battery called the mitochondria.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Qigenics. From stem cell therapy to lifestyle coaching, Qigenics is the perfect place to go for all your health and wellness needs. This health clinic is amazing at getting you personalized medicine and wellness that is unique to you. Use the code Ageless and you'll get 20% off your first service with them. Go to www.qigenix.com to find out more information about these powerful methods.
It's mind-boggling. Okay, you have 30 some trillion cells. Each of those cells are going to have hundreds of mitochondria. So you think of your Tesla car. Okay, the human body, if you kind of make it, if a Tesla car was built like a human body, every single drop of paint, every piece of rubber on the tire, everything in that entire car would be the battery. Okay, the whole car would be the battery. Like there wouldn't be a battery pack. The entire car would be the battery. And that's how the human body is. And that's how we have such fine-tuned energy supplies all across of it. So first part, we need to maintain the mitochondrial strength. And that's oxidative stress management. It's your B vitamins, your B12s, like there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, right? And then the other part of your human body, so mitochondrial, so I teach people how to restore mitochondrial health and maintain that level. And part of it's your physiology as well. And the other big part of human physiology is our membranes. Okay, you have these 30 trillion cells, and these are like little apartments in a huge, huge apartment. They're all separate from each other. And there's some sort of compartmentalization, just like you separate your kitchen from your bathroom, so you can do some functions in one area of the house without affecting the entire house. And your body's organized like that. But everything in the human body is alive. Like it's not like bricks and mortar or the plaster of your walls. These are living materials. And the living materials that your body uses to create walls are called lipids or phospholipids or fats. Right? And they create the bilayers, and they determine whether your walls are in good shape or whether there's holes in the walls or whether they're too stiff or misform. And so the phospholipid balance of your membranes becomes absolutely critical. And this is where the plasmalogens come in, because that's one molecule class that is very strange. We're very dependent upon them. We get some from our parents or mother in breastfeeding. So it's the natural source of plasmalogens is in breastfed babies. And that's why breastfeeding is so important for the first 6 to 12 months, especially for the myelination of the brain. And then eventually the human body catches up and can make its own plasmalogens. But it's not a small amount. It's like 30% of your brain. Like all this myocarditis that you're seeing out there with people dropping dead, that's from plasmalogen losses in their heart. Like the heart muscle has about 50% plasmalogen in it. And the weird thing about these molecules is you can't really get them from the food supply because they don't survive our digestion. So the human body is dependent upon them, and they go down in certain diseases, and they go down as we age. So one of the things that was critical for me when I was showing people how we can restore brain volume, like I was able to increase my occipital lobe by 10%, my white matter density, my myelination by I think 8 or 9%, the functional connectivity of say my nucleus basalis or my substantia nigra, all that connectivity could be improved. And it's not magic. It's basically restoring those molecules that the human body needs and doing it in a strategic way. And so that's the second part is that membrane structure of your human body. And then the third part, as you go in a triage perspective, is okay, what's the most core thing is your mitochondria. Second core is your membrane structure. Third core is really your neurological signaling. Like your body is a whole network of neurons, right? That communicate, connect, make things happen. The brain, of course, is the only thing. I tell people that the entire body is basically designed to keep your brain fed, right? Because I can replace your shoulder, I can even replace your heart, but the one thing I can't replace is your brain. And your body protects it pretty aggressively with the blood-brain barrier, and but things can get into that, and when we lose our brain, we lose we lose ourselves. We can't replace that. So I critically tell people that that's the number one priority in life, is really maintaining your brain vitality. And that's where the advanced MRI comes in, because you can actually, there's tools out there that we can use that accurately track and monitor not just the structure of the brain. Like most people look at MRI and say, oh, what are the volumes of my different parts of my brain, or do I have a tumor, or do I have a multiple sclerosis lesion, or do I have a stroke? Those are the type of, they're kind of acute care usages. Is there any overt problem with my brain? But MRI is far more valuable than that. It can tell us function in real time. But the neurological system of the body, you talk about people with ALS, or you have the neuron, which is the wire, like the wiring in your walls, right? It has copper wire that goes long distances, and it has a coating on that, which keeps it from shorting out and making sparks fly, right? And your body has that too. The inside is called your axon, and that's where your neurological signals go. So if you want to be able to move quickly and be responsive to your environment and so on. And the outer coating is called your myelin. And those structures have very specific nutritional needs and physiological needs, right? Like we have, the body doesn't really stop. Like, I talk to people with the heart or the brain. Like you can't just turn your heart off for 6 hours and give it a rest. Like it never stops, which in itself is pretty. The more you look at the human body, the more in awe you become of what it actually can do. Like think about that, 60, 70 beats a minute from birth.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like think of a car. Like what else in our world can perform day in and day out, hour by hour, minute by minute, and the things like it's pretty remarkable that we're even alive at all if you think about it. And so when you get in awe of what it does, then our job is just to kind of say, let's keep it, let's give it the tools. Okay, let's not play God, okay, because we really don't know all the things that work. Okay, we're given some miraculous working system here, and our job is try to keep it running, fundamentally. And we can measure that. That's where the advanced mass spec technology comes in. It's just like anything else in this world. You want to be able to monitor changes, because we're like we're not plants, right? Like you have to eat food, you have to work out, your body needs to have some sort of resistance, other goes to atrophy. So we are still stewards of our own bodies. We're stewards not of our mind and of where we put our bodies, what kind of purpose we put them into, and and all that kind of stuff. And so, and that kind of interaction between putting yourself in the right environment, forcing your body to adapt to certain things, right? The reason why we work out, I tell people, we work out, working out is bad for you. So I say exercising is bad for you, but recovering from exercise is pretty good. So you want to, it's the recovery, because what you're doing is you're tricking your body. If you're lifting out on weights, you're tricking your body into thinking that that's what it has to do. So it doesn't know any different. It thinks if it thinks you have to lift 100-pound weights, it's going to adapt to 100-pound weights. So the day that you're not lifting those weights, you have all that extra capacity. Or if you're doing cardiovascular training and you're improving your oxygen utilization, you're tricking the body into thinking it needs more efficient oxygen utilization. And so you are now actively supporting, teaching your body, just like you would teach a child, skills for a particular environment. And that's what we do as a steward. So combination of those two things, but like you can't take a malnourished person and put them in the workout room, expect them to build muscle.
Honestly, this is so important. Everything you're saying, it just resonates. And it's so aligned with the purpose of Ageless and Timeless, because as you said earlier, we're thinking ageless and timeless, i.e. immortality. And that doesn't have to be a pipe dream. And this is, we're not saying what your particular customized experience is going to be as an individual, but we do know that you have some control over the choices, and we are the sum total of our choices. And even though you've talked about and referenced nutrition programs and exercises, we'll talk about that in a moment, because I do want people to understand that there are some things that you should do and there are some things you shouldn't do, and these are the things that you should do to support exactly everything that you've just described in terms of the maximum performance of that electric car. So, or the performance of the wiring in your home, or those metaphors that you've used are very, very proficient, because they do give people a way to relate. Some podcast guests have said aging is a disease. And I know when I spoke to you originally, I mentioned that to you, and you said, "Oh, no, that's a very bad way to look. That's a negative approach to what we're all trying to accomplish here." So could you touch on that for a moment? And
aging is absolutely, unambiguously not a disease. Okay. It's just not, period. Okay. And so, because what aging is, it's an association with the probability of a negative outcome. Okay. So when you have, over time, you have a higher probability that something will fail. Okay, take a car, right? Might be the brakes, might be the transmission, might be the headlights, might be the windshield, but over a period of time, there is going to be an association with how old the car is to certain breakdowns. Okay, so age is simply an association. It doesn't cause the outcome. It's just associated with the outcome. And that's an important, very, very important distinction, because people want to think that you're programmed, okay, that we're programmed to die. And that is absolutely just not true. Okay, we adapt to it. People change their lifestyles. They lose their purpose in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and their kids grow up, and the things that they had a purpose for, they don't do anymore. And then they have this idea that they're going to go retire. Okay, well, that is you're accepting death at that point in time, because you're going to say, you know what, your body is going to adjust to the demands that you keep putting on it. And so the aging thing, it's just not, because first of all, it's not a definable feature. Okay, you don't die of one thing. Like, you don't all die of a heart attack. You don't all die of pulmonary disease or stroke. So you have a whole list of age-related or age-associated mortality causes. And so even if you live to 110 years old and that person at 110 dies, their whole body doesn't die at 110. Okay? One of their functions died, one of the critical functions died, but maybe their muscles were still working, their heart might be still working, maybe their lungs are working. So but just one critical function stopped working. So even at 110, 90% of the body was still working fine. So it still was there. And so I think this is the issue people get. So I'm sorry, but it's a defeatism perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to capture this portrait of Dorian Gray model of immortality, which is just not a reality-based situation, because time is, time doesn't stop. Okay, so
you know what, Dr. Goodenowe, I just want to be sure that people understand that there are choices that one makes that make this continuum that you're discussing with us right now a personalized, customized experience. So if you mistreat your body, you are going to get that result. So like they say, food is your health, right? And or health is wealth, or all those kind of platitudes. But what you're describing is the possibility, and not looking at the experience as a negative, but as a positive. So it's not it's not dying, it's the absence of life. That's a little, it's semantic, but it's also very actionable. And so I just want our viewers to understand you do have choices, and all of what Dr. Goodenowe is describing is the possibility. It seems utopian, but it actually isn't when you think about the steps along the way. So maybe we could back up just for a moment. I think what we need to do is define a few terms, and one of them, of course, is prodrome, and the other is plasmalogen. Those are two terms that, until I read your book or met you, I never had heard of them, and I think I'm pretty well immersed in a lot of the wellness nomenclature. So I'm sure that many of my viewers would need those terms defined. So could you spend a moment just to give?
For sure. Yeah, okay. And so the prodrome is just technically, it's a dictionary word. It's that which comes before. It is something that is predictive of a future event. And then plasmalogens are an actual class of molecules that are in the body. It's a biochemical, one of our natural biochemicals. And one last point on this aging thing, it's function. So people should only think about maintaining function. Okay, if you maintain, the goal is to maintain function indefinitely, and to maintain function. And then people should take all the things that they've done. If you've been successful in your life, if you've been successful in relationships, all those rules that apply in your everyday life, they apply to your biochemistry as well. So don't think that the body is some sort of black box and start seeking some magic pill or magic, one-time thing. And I tell people, so the prodrome process and plasmalogens, it's kind of this triage approach. Like if you're a gardener, for example, right, and you fertilize your lawn, so nitrogen is your number one prior. If you want to get nice plants, you need nitrogen. But you know what? If it doesn't rain, if you don't water it, no matter how much nitrogen you put on, you're not going to get any use of the nitrogen. So you say, okay, first things first, I need to have enough water for my plant. Then the second things. So, okay, nitrogen is the next big thing. So if I have water and I have nitrogen, then I say, okay, what can I add more? Then you put your phosphorus and potash, and then eventually you have all those in place. And you say, well, you know what else can I do? Then other little micronutrients become important. And so sometimes what happens is that scientists are bad for this, right? Because we have decades and decades of historical knowledge, but it feels boring. Like, I got to come up with something new to talk about. Like, I can't talk about this old stuff forever because, what am I getting paid for? I got to come up with a new idea, right? So we end up getting really caught in the weeds, like this gene and this particular metabolite is going to be, a miracle. And when we forget the real basics of stuff, like those can be very valuable, especially if you've taken care of all the rest. And that's where prodromes come in. Okay, so the prodrome basically says, one thing we know, the most accurately defined human condition is health. If you go online, you look at, biomarkers for Parkinson's or biomarkers for diabetes, well, it's always going to be controlled to a normal population. So like a normal population or a healthy population is always the control arm of every single trial, right? And so we get focused on the car accident and we lose sight of the operational car on the other side. And what I've done basically says, you know what, let's not focus on the car accident. Let's focus on the functionality of the car. So we can understand health. And I don't need to wait for my engine to seize I already know that if my engine oil is low, that's bad. I don't have to wait for a cardiovascular event. I don't have to wait for my vision to get blurry. I don't have to wait, okay, for neuropathy. Okay, I can intervene at the deviation from health stage. I don't need to know, because that can happen. There can be multiple consequences from one thing. And so that's where the prodrome testing comes in, right? Is saying we know what the healthy optimal function is. Like that is actually not ambiguous. We know it. Now, what the hard part is, we don't always know exactly how to fix every single thing in the world. But fundamentally, conceptually, it's just now a matter of, that's where our scientific minds come in. And so the plasmalogens are one of those really high up on the food chain. They're on that water nitrogen level type of thing. They're one of the core components that really affect our aging. So it's one of the places you want to start. Good nutrition, your B vitamins, and your mitochondrial health. Obviously, that's key. But the plasmalogens are a big hammer. And the reason why they're a big hammer is because we're so dependent on them, and we have virtually no nutritional supply of them.
And how come? How come? Goodenowe, sorry to interrupt you, but how come you don't hear more about plasmalogens? And like I said, until I met you, I never read anything about a plasmalogen as a mechanism for improving one's health. And so, why do you think it's been kept as kind of a mystery in the, more of the late?
I'm just as to blame for this. Look, I have a PhD in neurochemistry, studying brain chemistry. Okay, I never heard of plasmalogens until I saw them on the mass spectrometer. Then I started looking at this stuff, and I said, well, you know what? There's some rare diseases with plasmalogen deficiencies, and the reason why it's escaped the general medical community is because typically we're pretty good at it. We're pretty good and robust at making these things, and the analytical technology to measure them is hard, and they really only really affect us late in life. And so the study of age-associated diseases is not that long. Most of medicine has been focused on acute issues, right? And what we've done a really good job over the last 100 years is increasing the average time of death, right? So average lifespans have gone up dramatically because we have done a very good job of reducing premature death. But maximum lifespans have virtually been unchanged. So we haven't been able to increase lifespan. And that really is a different situation. So plasmalogens are one of those critical things. I found them on the mass spectrometer. I started doing research, and I'm going, my goodness gracious. Like this is, there's like 30% of this stuff is your brain, your hearts, your lungs. Children, young children that are born prematurely and will have bronchial dysplasia will have plasmalogen deficiencies. So it's there, but it was kind of just buried. It's kind of going into a town and going downtown and seeing a bowling alley, walking in there and saying, wow, there's all these people bowling. People still bowl? Wow. There's a whole world. Like, and that biochemistry and science is the same way. Everyone gets their own field, and very, very often a specialty field will just be there in its own little world without anyone knowing about it.
Did you find that you had a lot of resistance in the allopathic, even in the regenerative medicine world, when you introduced this concept of plasmalogen?
Not really. It's the awareness is growing quite dramatically. The reality is that the results are really dramatic. Like in autism, like we see children getting better in literally weeks. Like I just was talking to one of my doctors yesterday, and he said he had a 3-year-old autistic child, completely nonverbal, been on mitochondrial support in the plasmalogens, and in 3 weeks he's speaking 25 words.
Wow.
Okay, right. These are crazy things. I got children with terminal leukodystrophies that their brains are remyelinating when they're on plasmalogens. I got little children that you've seen videos of. Little Thatcher, he has a rare disease of RCDP. He couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't communicate. He runs and plays with his brothers now. We have significant improvement in dementia. So the doctors, they have, when they start using them, that's the nice thing about it. There's an academic side of it. Intellectually, I can say, yes, here's the science, here's the logic, here's how it's supposed to work. But when you put it in your real world situation and people see it themselves, it really is hard to. We're programmed not to believe you can cure anything, or we're programmed not to believe people get better. So as soon as they start noticing that, it doesn't take very long for them to get convinced.
Well, so how does a client, a patient, increase their plasmalogens? What is the protocol that you use for accomplishing that task?
So one of the challenges with these plasmalogens is that I tell you, there's a whole bunch in your heart, there's a whole bunch in the brain. So if I eat a nice juicy steak, why am I not eating plasmalogens? Why can't I eat food supply? And the problem is the very last step in their manufacture creates this very acid sensitive bond. And so you can't eat plasmalogens, otherwise they'd be like product. So I'm a chemist. So what I designed was a precursor. And that's what human breast milk is designed for. So humans, our bodies have been smart enough to know this themselves. So the human breast milk, the mother makes plasmalogen precursors, not the actual plasmalogen, that are highly absorbed, enter the brain. And so I design molecules based upon human breast milk plasmalogen precursors that can target two different types. One is targeting the synapse, like the signaling rate. These are that's called Proton Neuro, is a brand name. And that has high levels of DHA, and it's for increasing cognition, increasing neuromuscular function, and it increases reverse cholesterol transport, that type of thing. And then the other one is that protective coating that goes around your axons. And that's the omega-9 or oleic acid version of the plasmalogens. And that is for myelination. And that's what we use for multiple sclerosis, for autism, for improved sleep, improves that type of memory and
so that's the brand name, the Glia, right? Glia,
yes.
right?
And so that's why in getting it in highly concentrated forms, that you can supplement yourself and restore it. So that's what happened for me personally, right? So when I did my before and after brain scans, I was taking higher doses of the plasmalogen precursors, and I was able to backfill, if you will. I was able to reverse the gradual loss of plasmalogens that was occurring in me, and so we have that kind of document. So that's kind of where that's how you get plasmalogens back into your system.
Okay, so did the proton scan, the one that you had me do, which I will get the results I think next week. But when you do that scan as a patient of your clinic, what are the biomarkers? What are, other than what you just described, what are the results that you're going to see by having that scan done that will help you to determine protocol?
So what I did when I designed the proton scan test is I cherry picked all the core components of physiological health of a human being, and put it in a format that a doctor can look at and get a 20,000 or 30,000 foot view of the individual. Okay, because one of the problems with science is that people will take one biomarker and they'll want to make a big interpretation, like just your homocysteine alone, for example, or your cholesterol level, and they'll try to use one biomarker and interpret the whole story. And that's not an accurate way of looking at a complex system like the human body. So proton scan looks at this membrane structure and function, like I mentioned. So those phospholipids that are critical for membrane structure and function, it measures those in the accurate way, because there's certain molecules that are really strong epidemiological risk factors. Phosphatidylcholine, for example. People think of Steve Jobs. He died of pancreatic cancer. Without even measuring his blood, I can guarantee that he had a choline deficiency, because virtually all pancreatic cancer sufferers are choline deficient before they get pancreatic cancer. So we measure the choline levels, and that's a critical thing, especially people that are strict vegetarians. They can have challenges getting the right nutrients in their body. Like, it's okay to be a vegetarian, but you got to remember, you are not a plant. Okay, you are an actual mammal. So you have nutritional requirements that a mammal requires. So if you're not going to eat other mammals, you're going to have to make sure your food supply provides you with those components. So just be smart about it. And so that's colines are one of those issues that you sometimes don't get properly. So
Dr. Goodenowe, what's the best way to get phosphatidylcholine? I know lecithin has been touted, but there's some side effects for some people with soy. So how do you improve phosphatidylcholine orally?
So that was a big challenge for me, because there isn't a good source out there other than eggs. The only real good source is egg yolks. So actually, this is good timing. I'm just launching an egg yolk oil supplement that has natural animal-based phosphocholine. The other sources are sunflower and soy, but eggs. So the issue with the plant-based or seed oil-based phosphatidylcholine is that it has high levels of linoleic acid, your omega-6, and it has the structure of the phosphatidylcholine is not natural to the human body. Now, the body will eventually convert it, but it takes extra energy. And you want omega-9 phosphatidylcholine. That's what your body wants.
Right,
and
because you don't have too much omega-6 in the body. That's one of the big enemies of the fish oils, right, is to balance the DHA, EPA with more omega-3, and omega-6 is associated with the negative omega-9. One other omega that I was wondering about too is omega-7, sea buckthorn. Do you recommend that as part of your protocol?
No, it's a very small, those are trace. When people talk about fats and lipids, don't try to get your extra vitamins from those sources. Those are core nutrients. And so the issue, there's three main ones you want to keep. Is your saturated fats, which are actually good for you, by the way. It's a total scam against saturated fat. Okay, this is the best way to think about it. Okay, so you have fat. Like when your body makes, you physically make fat, okay, oil. It's called triglycerides, and it sends it to your fat cells. So the first question you might want to ask is, well, what if the human body has to make fat? What kind of fat does the human body want to make? And the type of fat that the human body makes is saturated fat, like palmitic and stearic acid, plus omega-9, oleic acid. That's what the human body will make to store for later. So your fat cells are your gas tanks. Okay, your body basically stores energy with high density energy called fat, triglycerides. That's what the human body basically stores.
Right.
And so when you're looking for a nutritional perspective, this big omega-6 dispersion that we've had really only happened in the last 100 years. Okay, this is when the seed oil industries, and it actually started with Crisco, with people trying to get away with, how do we deal with all these cotton seeds from the cotton industry, and then industry got better and better at it, and so we got all these omega-6. So we really didn't have a high omega-6 diet at all until the last 100 years. So the reason why phosphatidylcholine is so important is it drives your reverse cholesterol transport. Okay, so your HDL, the quality of your HDL transport system is really driven by your phosphatidylcholine system. And that's why choline deficiencies are really bad. And that's why they have a high association with cancer rates. So that's why you want to get, the plant-based phosphatidylcholine is better than nothing. Okay, so I've been struggling with this because it's better to get plant-based phosphatidylcholine than be choline deficient, for sure. Okay, don't not take a plant-based phosphatidylcholine, but it's just not ideal for the human body. So I've finally been able to design and manufacture. And that's I just actually announced it here in August. So it hasn't hit, actually, we haven't started shipping it yet. So by September, we'll be shipping.
I'd love to get some of that for sure.
Because you can blend it with things. Like it mixes anything up together. You can make smoothies with it and all kinds of things.
So I had a question, because when I read your book, I was really quite happy about this, but I wanted to ask you about it. You say that cholesterol, which of course the allopathic world tries to tell you to be 200 or below, but you say in the low 200s or even I think in one place in your book you said 220 to 240 was an ideal level, but that's really going against, of course, the pharmaceutical industry that wants to sell you more statin drugs, and so they lower. But of course, people who are studied this know that cholesterol is actually good. It's just the size of your particles and the bad cholesterol that can block your arteries. But you're focused on the cholesterol absolute plus the HDL, which is the transport. So can you just give us some markers of what to look for in our blood work? Is 220 to 240?
Sure. Let me give you the quick short list. So we got on a sidetrack with the proton scan, but let's talk about, because cholesterol is in the proton scan test.
Yes.
Yeah. This obsession with low cholesterol is probably one of the biggest health scams ever. Yeah. Okay. It's just not true. Like the epidemiological data is undeniable. It is extremely robust. People with cholesterol between 220 and 240 have the longest lifespans. Full stop, period. As soon as your total cholesterol level gets below 200, your all-cause mortality goes up. That's just an absolute fact. It's not even up for question. So the question now becomes, where did all of this statin cholesterol lowering concept, like how did this even get in to our mindset? If this epidemiology is so damn clear, how could we even remotely get into this mess that we're in? And the reality is that oxidized LDL, okay, when you have oxidative stress, okay, and cholesterol, which is not the cholesterol, but the LDL particle that carries cholesterol. That's a whole different conversation about the different cholesterol particles. This is where people get into the weeds and they forget about the big issue. Is that when you have oxidative stress and you get oxidized LDL, okay, that is pro-atherogenic. So it'll promote atherosclerosis. And so what the geniuses in the pharmaceutical industry did is they invented a molecule called statins. And what statins do is they block your cell's ability to make cholesterol. Okay, but your body needs cholesterol. It's probably one of the most important molecules of the entire human body.
Right.
And you also need it for your hormones. All your hormones come from cholesterol, like, many of them. So anyway, so what statins do, they block your cell's ability to make cholesterol. And so it forces all your cells to suck cholesterol out of the blood supply because they can't make their own. They have to pull it in. And that's how statins lower your LDL. And so if I force your cells to take up all this cholesterol, it will bring in any kind of oxidized LDL that you have. So, and this has been proven very, very unambiguously in the clinical literature. Statins have no positive impact on cardiovascular outcomes in people with low oxidative stress. Only if you have a high CRP, okay, will the statins have an outcome. Well, you know what? There's lots of ways to lowering your CRP without using statins. So bottom line is, if you keep your oxidative stress level low, cholesterol levels are completely benign to the human body and actually benefit you long term. So the other things, let me give you some really high points for people when we have limited time. The other one that you can get on your regular lab test, we put it in the proto scan, but you can get it anywhere, is your creatinine. Now they measure this for your kidney function, but what's more important than high creatinine, of course, really, really high is bad because your kidneys are failing. But for most of us looking for longevity and health and vitality, it's low creatinine. Okay, low creatinine drives muscle wasting in the elderly. And it's one of the most critical biomarkers that we don't take advantage of. And it's so easy to fix. You just go to the health food store and grab creatinine. Okay, it's cheap as dirt, comes in a big bucket. Okay, and take creatine. So creatine is something that everybody over the age of 40 should be on, period, full stop. And what it does two things. Not only does it restore the phosphocreatine in your muscles, which is critical, which is where this creatinine comes from. But it also reduces your homocysteine levels because your like your body will make 4 to 5 grams of creatine every day for your body, for your muscles, your brain. We use it for short-term energy. And it's a really high metabolic demand. So if you take creatine as a supplement, what you're doing is you're relieving, you're taking the pressure off your own internal system. So creatine supplementation is a must for anyone who wants good healthy muscle growth and development as they get older. Because muscle wasting is a big thing.
Do you think taking it as a powder is better than a capsule in the creatine? Because
I know it's just so hard to get enough capsules. I take my creatine with my morning coffee. Like it mixes with anything. So, and that's where I put it in my coffee in the morning.
And yours is a powder. Whose brand do you like?
Oh, it doesn't really matter. Just the creatine monohydrate, I think they call it.
Yeah, but people say they get a stomach disorder, stomach upset sometimes with creatine. So that's why I asked you: is there one that?
There's a whole bunch of versions out there. Basically, you find one that you work with. Like I use bulk creatine monohydrate. But if you have an adverse reaction, try a different one. Like there's creatine hydrochloride. And again, all these manufacturers they're always trying to compete with each other. So they're always going to have one gimmick or another. And so the trick is you find one that works for you. But creatine monohydrate, it's around forever. Chances are half these manufacturers are probably using the same core manufacturer. They're just putting different label on the damn things anyways. So that's one thing. So creatine, keep an eye on that. It'll also, if you're having a hard time getting your homocysteine down, you're taking your B vitamins and B12 and folate, you're doing all this stuff right, and your homocysteine levels keep on staying high, and you're going, what? I'm doing everything right. What's wrong with it? Right. It's probably because you're creatine deficient.
Okay. And if you're deficient, then that also means just phosphatidylcholine is going to be off. Okay.
Well, because the methyltransferase system makes your own. So that's the other reason why phosphatidylcholine supplementation is so important, because it takes the pressure off your body's. It's not considered an essential nutrient because your body can make it, but it's a lot of energy to make it. So why don't you give your body a bit of a hand and give it some stuff for free? Okay, let the damn chicken make the phosphatidylcholine for you. And then that's where you kind of go. And then the next big thing is your fasting triglycerides. This is another big thing that people don't get right.
Right.
You got to keep your fasting triglycerides under 100. Like, you don't want to weigh down in, anorexia 40s and 50s, but you want to be in that 60 to 90 range. If you go in and you get your fasting triglycerides and they're at 120, they're going to say, "Oh, you're normal." But when your triglycerides are over 100, anyone will have a very hard time losing weight, because what you're doing is you're recycling your fat. Okay, but the triglycerides. So the triglycerides, okay, that's fat. Like the triglycerides in your blood, that's like olive oil on your cupboard. It's fundamentally almost exactly the same molecule as the olive oil in your cupboard. And so what your body's doing is you're eating, and it's storing energy for later. So what your body has 2 gears. It has a fed gear and a fasting gear. So when you eat a meal, that's when you go to the gas station and you're filling up with gas, right? And it's filling a gas tank up. And the gas tank is all these little fat cells in your body. That's your gas tank for later. And so once the short-term energy of your meal, like once your gut digests the food, okay, at a certain period of time, your body switches to a fasting state. And at that time, it switches, and all of a sudden, your fat cells start releasing fatty acids for your energy supply for your whole body. And your body fundamentally wants to run in the fasting state. And this is what prevents a lot of cancers, is just maintaining the fasting state. So if you're in the fasting state and your fat cells are releasing all these fatty acids to all the cells of your body, and if your triglycerides are over 100, those cells are taking the fatty acids, saying, "Oh, I can't take all this stuff," and they're just recycling it. They're turning it back into the triglycerides, and they're sending it back to your fat cells. So getting your triglycerides under 100 are critical, because it indicates that you're metabolically efficient. Okay, if you have fasting triglycerides over 100, your body is metabolically inefficient. It's like driving down the highway with the guy in front of you with the smoke coming out the back of his tailpipe. That's what your body's doing. Like, if your triglycerides are over 100, your body's just smoking. It's recycling stuff.
So I have a question for you. So just on my own situation, I did my blood work in March, and then I did some again the other day just to do a follow-up, and a very, very exhaustive panel of blood tests that my regenerative medicine doctor requires. So anyway, 95 triglycerides last time in March, and now they went up to 117, and just in the few months. So what did I do wrong? What would happen? What would you recommend to people like me who suddenly they go from under 100 to over 100? What did I do?
So 2 things. So one thing that is important is your neuromuscular health, like your skeletal muscle. Okay. So when people have improved peroxisomal function, so if you're doing everything right, but number one is this creatine thing, and maintaining skeletal muscle mass. Okay, your skeletal muscles are the main consumers. Your heart, for example, these are main consumers of your fatty acids.
Got it.
And that's what happens with aging. As a general aging as a disease, no, what happens is you start losing skeletal muscle mass, and your body, those skeletal muscles are no longer eating these fatty acids. And so your body, your fat cells don't know any different. They're still releasing it, but you don't have the muscle capacity to burn them up. And so your cells keep recycling it. So skeletal muscle, mitochondrial health, like the carnitines, like the acetyl-L-carnitines, CoQ10, N-acetylcysteine. Like if your mitochondrial health gets impaired, then triglycerides will creep up a little bit.
Right.
But don't get obsessed. That's not super bad, okay, where you're at. And it could be on any given Sunday. And that's why we have our own labs, because, I like to try. I'm a very suspicious, untrusting person when it comes to this kind of work. And so I like to.
It's normal for what? When they put these on the lab tests, they're really can be quite misleading.
Correct.
So I'm really excited to get your test results.
Well, see, think about normal vitamin. Like if we use normal levels for vitamin D, okay,
Right.
nobody would be on the proper vitamin D supplementation because the,
Right.
the natural normal levels are all low. Okay. And so that's what happens with triglycerides, but in the opposite way. And
Right.
how those numbers come up is all of these lab tests, okay, they were originally designed for acute care medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're, you got a person in an accident situation or a serious health condition, and they're looking for, how do I diagnose a disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were never designed for diagnosing health. They were to diagnose a disease. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a serious problem and your triglycerides at 300 or something, right, and your blood looks like it's white, that's what it looks like if it's got lipidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got a serious problem, right? You could have acute liver failure or something like that. And
Right.
that's where these blood tests were designed to look at these really, really high levels. And so epidemiologically, getting triglycerides as a risk factor, they're not looking at optimized health. They're looking at outcomes for disease endpoints. That's why these blood test measurements. So the creatinine, right? You measure that for kidney clearance. The other one that people misuse is uric acid. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and this is another thing. This obsession with low uric acid has got to stop also. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
high uric acid is bad. Like if it gets way high, gout.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That.
but just a little nugget of information.
Mm-hmm.
Gout have higher intelligence than non-gout. So people with high uric acid have higher levels of intelligence than not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because uric acid is basically an indicator of your NAD levels.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want super high levels because that would be gout. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
uric acid is like the human body vitamin C.
Mm-hmm.
Low levels are far more dangerous. Low levels are found in Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's. And so low levels of uric acid are really highly associated with neurological insufficiencies and usually indicate an NAD deficiency. So you can take some of these simple vitamins like just niacin. Like a lot of this, and that's the problem with some of this advanced nutrition, is that some of these solutions are old.
Yes.
And they're cheap as dirt to use.
Yes.
And so as a company, in an industry, like how do you make a profit selling stuff that has been around for 100 years and it's cheap. And so people are always trying to find some little nuance to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. And some of those stuffs are valuable, right? But a lot of it, in a short-term thing. But when you're talking about longevity and you're thinking, I want to live for the next 300 years, so I'm going to be taking something. I don't really care about the 1 week effect of something. Like I want the multi-year effect. So if I take the proper B vitamins for a proper period of time, my body should get equilibrated to that, right? And I'm interested in having the things that my body naturally wants to have. Okay, like what are the natural intermediates in our food supply? What are the natural intermediates in our own human biochemistry? And so how do we engineer ourselves, not try to outsmart the human body, but actually just try to say, I just want to figure it out and I just want to give it what it's asking for. So I want to be able to listen to the body. I want to say, please tell me what you're missing. Like how does the body tell me what it's missing? And the only way it can tell me is through advanced blood testing.
Yeah.
That's how the body talks to me. It says, that's how it tells me. Because it can't go to the grocery store and pick out a bottle of ice cream versus a bottle of coconut milk. Like it can't tell the difference. Like that's my job. But it can at least tell me what's going wrong. But if I'm not listening to that person, okay, I can't do anything. I can't help my body if I don't listen to my body. And that's our job and so that's what I'm trying to, and it's a lifelong ambition because, and we try to pick away one at a time, the best we can. Start with the big issues. And you'd be surprised how often you fix a couple of the big issues and all these little issues go away, right? Inflammation, shoulder pain, psoriasis, eczemas, some of these things that, you've been fighting forever with this cream and that cream and the other thing. And all of a sudden your internal biochemistry is working properly.
Right.
Stuff goes away.
Yeah. And one thing on niacin, I think we should tell people that it is better to take the flush niacin, even though it's a little uncomfortable after you take it, but it does far more good than the non-flush, right? And I think you mentioned to me that you take niacin flush, and I was really happy to hear that because I hate it when I take it that I feel that kind of prickliness and the maybe a little bit cold, even though
Yeah.
it's warm out. You get that kind of body temperature thing. But knowing that it's doing the good that it does, the circulation effect and the cholesterol diminishing, or the bad cholesterol diminishing.
Yeah. It's really good at getting your HDL levels up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like the flushing is uncomfortable. Like I take about 500 milligrams a day,
Yes,
and
a lot.
obviously I can't take it before my podcast with you, otherwise I have a huge red face, right?
All
And
red.
so part of it, when when you're going to the office or you're going to work, right? I did this a couple of times. I go to a meeting and they think I'm going to have a heart attack or going to pass out because I got this big red flush on me.
I
So
know.
those days I try to take it at night, right? And
Right.
then nobody sees the flushing because it's gone by morning. But
you do,
yeah, that's the challenge is fitting it in your day.
but it does look like you have a great suntan when you take it. That I have had people comment on that. Although I'm very uncomfortable, I know that it's making my face look like glowing.
Yeah.
So that I spoke with Jessica today, your assistant, and she so kindly and generously made an offer for you. I hope you don't mind. And maybe she hasn't spoken to you, but
Yeah.
she did. First 10 people that are listening today or are viewing this podcast, if they contact me at my website, which I'll tell you in a minute, and I'll have it flashed on the screen, that the first 10 people that use the Ageless code will get your book for free.
Excellent.
Did you know about that?
Yeah, she sent me an email.
Okay.
Half an hour before the call. So
okay,
no problem. That sounds great.
Okay, so for everyone that's listening, my website, my email is themichellehughescompany@gmail.com, and Michelle is with one L and an E, and company is spelled out singular. So themichellehughescompany@gmail.com. I'll flash that on the screen when we edit the tape, and so if you want that book and you're one of the first 10, I'll be keeping count. Call me and I'll let Dr. Goodenowe's office know. So anyway, just want to be sure we got that in. So Dr. Goodenowe, I think we're going to need to do a follow-up because I watched your presentation the other day that you so kindly sent me. And there were so many things that you'd said that are even more current than your book. That, so you're a moving target, of course. You're a scientist. So there's always going to be a new discovery, and you have so many patents. And so would it be okay if maybe like in 6 months or so we could do a follow-up with you?
That would be great. I'd love to.
And we'll talk.
And people can follow my research at drgoodenowe.com. There's always something going on there.
And they can order your products. You have to do it through a physician, correct? If they want to get on
prodome.com. The plasmalogen supplements, they're all dietary supplements. So there are commercial, there are private available versions of it. So
they can order it on, but
absolutely.
But they can come to your company as well.
Yeah, I always recommend like one of the practicing physicians because it's just nice to have a guide in your path. Like there's no harm in doing it yourself. And we have large, Facebook groups with children with autism or parents with autism and so on. So we want to help as many people as we can. And solutions we try to make as many solutions available to as many people as possible.
And big hearts and lots of love and desire to give back and doing so through very solid science and it just making a huge difference in the world. So thank you for everything you've done and all your research since 1990, I guess it was, right, that you became sort of impassioned by all of this. So all right, well, we have a date. I'll definitely let you know in 6 months, and then I'll be talking to you next week and about my the test results. Okay,
I look forward to it. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Okay, thank you so much again. Take care. Have a beautiful day. All right, bye-bye.